Hi, welcome to under7minutes.com. Let's see what we can do with Docker in 7 minutes. First, we will see what is a virtual machine. A virtual machine is a mechanism by which you can use an existing hardware. It could be a bare metal machine or it could be a cloud-based instance. How we can partition such a machine so that we can run multiple operating systems side by side. For example, in this case, we have a machine depicted this big box and we have a software called hypervisor installed on top of it. We have come across similar hypervisors like VirtualBox, VMware, etc. And on top of that, you can create virtual machines. Here we have 3 virtual machines, and each of those machines can independently be booted with specific operating systems. So here we have 1, 2, 3 operating systems, and on each of those operating systems we have applications, say A, B and C running. So this is a typical example of how a virtual machine runs. What we need to remember here is, in each of those virtual machines we have full operating system installed. Okay, that is the important thing that we need to remember. And another thing is, each of those virtual machines, when it starts, you will need to experience the booting up delay of a typical operating system. In this picture, we'll see how Docker runs. So this is the machine on which we have our host operating system. On top of that, instead of the hypervisor, we install software called Docker. And Docker lets you create virtual machines. But what we need to know here is, those virtual machines do not have the operating system inside. So the main advantage of Docker is there is no operating system boot up delay. The resource needed to run typical virtual machine under Docker is much smaller. And when it comes to Docker, we don't call these as virtual machines, we call them as containers. What is a container? Container is a virtual machine like object created by Docker. Okay, so to summarize, Docker containers are faster, lighter and portable. Okay, now let's get into Docker and see how Docker is structured. For now, let's imagine that Docker is just a software that we can download and install on our machine. When I say machine, it could be our desktop or laptop. So when we install Docker, these 2 components get installed. That is Docker client and Docker host. A role of Docker client is to take commands from our keyboard. Whatever command that we type, Docker client takes from us and passes it on to the Docker host. And then we also have another component which sits somewhere else. If it is from Docker, it's called Docker Hub. If you need to run a container having Ubuntu-like environment, what Docker will do is, it will check in its local image cache if the Ubuntu image is present. If it is not present, Docker will implicitly pull the image from the registry into its local image cache, and from there it will instantiate a container. So these are all containers. From one Ubuntu image, you could run as many containers as your host machine allows. Okay, so now about installing Docker, it is as simple as how we normally download and install an application. Okay, so now let's assume that we have Docker installed. First, let's see if I have any container running. Docker container ls. So I have no containers running. We'll come across this command again. I'm going to run Ubuntu container. So what I need to type? Docker container run -ti, because I need to interact with the container, -ti, and the name of the image, which is Ubuntu trusty or 1404, and the command, say let's say ping -c5. Okay, we can try another command, date. All these commands are getting executed inside the Docker container, which has Ubuntu-like environment. But remember, these containers do not have the Ubuntu operating system installed. It just has the essential libraries so that you get to interact just like how you would normally interact with an Ubuntu operating system. That is the beauty of Docker. How do we run a web server in Docker? Web server is a program that needs to run all the time. So we're adding a different parameter -d, which runs in the detached mode. Web server also will require some ports to be mapped so that we can access the container from the outside world. I am mapping my host machine's port 8080 into the container's port 80. This is what the Nginx is listening to. Docker container run -d to run as detached, and -p and port 8080, which is my host port, okay, and name of the image, which is Nginx. Okay, now if you see, we have one Docker image running, started 8 seconds ago. Now how do we access these containers? Because we have mapped port 80 and 80, we can take our browser, okay. So some of the common commands: docker container ls, which will list the running containers, and docker image ls will list the images that are present in your local Docker hosts. Then docker container run lets you run containers from some images that you specify, and docker container rm lets you delete containers. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your time. See you again. Bye bye.